I've done quite a few different jobs over the years. My very first one was when I was 16, a summer gig on a vegetable farm. Honestly, I hated it. That experience made me not want to look for work for a long time. I don't really recall how I got that first job, but the following summer, I ended up working as an assistant in a small art studio run by a woman named Gloria. My family knew her from their community center, and my younger brother had taken her weekend painting class a couple of years before. By that time, Gloria's health was getting worse. She told me it was from a mix of chronic fatigue and some other illness she wouldn't really explain clearly. My parents warned me she was a bit unusual. She was very spiritual, often talking about strange experiences with spirits, and once even mentioned doing something like a cleansing ritual. I'm not the type to believe in that stuff. I'm pretty skeptical, so I just took it lightly. Besides those odd stories, she was harmless and the job wasn't difficult. Most of my work was entering data and prepping photos of her art for her website. Gloria mostly painted landscapes and animals at local fairs. At first, I worked from her home, which was also her studio, so I'd spend a lot of time in her living room that doubled as my workspace. Eventually, she convinced me to come with her to some art shows where she taught me how to take photos of events. Soon enough, I was snapping pictures alongside her. It was dull work since I'm not really into art or animals, but things stayed normal until about a year later when I realized the real problem wasn't Gloria. It was her family. She had 2 sons. One lived far away, the other was in the military. The younger one, named Caleb, was in his early 30s and had some social challenges. Gloria was convinced vaccines had caused his difficulties, though she never gave me clear details. When Caleb finally came home, I met him while working at Gloria's house. At first, he seemed alright, just a little awkward. He loved movies, and since I'm a movie fan too, we'd sometimes chat about upcoming releases or favorite films. By then I was 18. Caleb was about 33. Somehow, he started believing I was interested in him, even though I never gave him any reason to think that. I only found out about this from my parents because Caleb had talked to my mom, who volunteered at the community center where Gloria also went. One day, Caleb showed up at my mom's desk and started talking nonstop about me. How fun I was, how he wanted to take me out, even invite me to his church. My mom and the center's director were very uncomfortable, and when I got home, my mom warned me to be careful not to lead him on. I was confused since I hadn't done anything of the sort. Things got weirder when I overheard Caleb and Gloria talking about religion and politics. Caleb said something really dark about wanting to harm a certain group of people, and Gloria just laughed it off. That creeped me out. After that, I kept my distance from Caleb and tried to keep interactions very brief. Eventually, Caleb moved out. I thought that was the end of it. A few years later, I had moved away and was working a new job. I was still connected with Gloria and Caleb on social media. I had recently started openly identifying as an atheist, something I hadn't done before. One night, Gloria messaged me about a ring I wore, a black band with a white star. She accused me of wearing a satanic symbol, even though I explained it wasn't true and that the symbol wasn't evil. She wouldn't listen, so I ignored her. The next morning, Caleb messaged me, demanding I come to his church. When I said no, his messages turned angry. He accused me of being lost and said the ring I wore made me vulnerable to possession. I blocked both of them and thought that would end it. But Caleb started showing up at my workplace. He'd find me, corner me, and wouldn't stop talking no matter how many times I tried to avoid him or say I was busy. Managers noticed and helped keep him away. Then I got a second job in another town, and he showed up there too. This time, I told the managers who he was, and they let me hide in a back room whenever he came around. During one encounter, Caleb shouted at us through the door, "I know you remember me." That was the last straw. The managers banned him from the store. For a while, he disappeared. Then years later, he came back. I was terrified just seeing him and tried to avoid him. I debated telling my bosses again, but felt nervous and unsure. Then one night, while working customer service, he caught me and said, "How's your little girl? She's 3 now, right?" I was stunned. I hadn't told anyone he knew that I was married or had a child. He also asked about my husband, and I said he was a good man, hoping to discourage Caleb. Luckily, another employee came by, and I escaped. As I left, Caleb said, "We'll talk again. We'll go out. We will." I finally reported everything to the managers, including how he knew details he shouldn't have. They checked the security cameras and later told me Caleb wouldn't be allowed back. I haven't seen him since, and I hope it stays that way. This has gone on for over 10 years, and I'm ready to move on. If he ever shows up again, I'll go to the police. But for now, I'm just glad it's over. I'm an 18-year-old girl, and recently I started a weekend job at a clothing store inside a big shopping mall. I work Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Just in my second week there, this guy came in. He acted a bit flirty, but nothing too serious. I guess he was in his mid-20s, which felt like a big age gap since I'm just 16. I do look a bit older than my age, so maybe he thought I was 18. I was pretty bored that day, so I didn't think much of it. It was just someone to talk to while I scanned his items. Later that same day, he came back during his lunch break. He said something like, "Thought I'd come see you again," which felt weird and kind of creepy. Then he tried to give me his phone number. At first, I said no because he was looking for a pen, but then he went outside and asked strangers for one. When he finally got a pen, he gave me his number anyway. I had a long line of customers and was the only one at the checkout, so I just took it hoping he'd leave. He asked for my name, but I was so uncomfortable I didn't want to tell him, so I just said it didn't matter. Then he bought something and asked for a receipt. The receipts have your name on them, so he found out my real name anyway. Before he left, he said something about how I was beautiful and that we should meet up sometime. No, we definitely shouldn't. The next Saturday, he showed up again at work asking why I hadn't texted him. He just hung around the checkout area and wouldn't leave. I had already told my co-workers and manager about him. I gave my co-worker a look to warn him, but nothing happened because we didn't want to cause a scene. I ignored the guy and talked to my co-worker instead. I made sure to mention school in the conversation to remind him I'm only 16. He stayed there for about 5 minutes and kept saying I should have texted him. I finally told him, "I should have said last week, but I didn't want to embarrass you in front of customers. I'm not interested." Then he asked if we could still be friends. I didn't answer because I had to stay professional at work. He kept complimenting my smile even though I wasn't smiling, which made me even more uncomfortable. I found a reason to leave and went to the warehouse to get my manager. When I came back, the guy had quickly bought a pack of candy and left. I think he realized I was getting help. Later, when I was on my lunch break, he said something like, "Not long till lunch now, right?" I told him I always take lunch at 12:30, but I hadn't realized how creepy he was at that time. My co-workers and manager know what he looks like now because they saw him lingering and checked the cameras. My manager warned me not to leave through the front entrance because the guy was waiting outside to see me. So I snuck out the back and went to a different spot for lunch just in case he knew where I usually went. I was really scared but had to eat because I hadn't brought food. While I was on break, the guy came into the store asking where I was. He said I had made a mistake on his receipt and wanted to know when I'd be back. My manager told him to stop harassing me and to leave. The guy was still waiting outside when my break ended, so I had to sneak back in through the back again. Since then, he's shown up other Saturdays, only on the days I work, and hangs around outside the back entrance near where I come in. One of my co-workers saw him and called me so I could sneak in the front instead. Every time, he tries to talk to me, but when someone gets management, he runs away. Also, creepy new Instagram accounts with no followers keep following me. When I block them, new ones pop up. I'm pretty sure it's him. My Instagram uses my full name, so it's easy for him to find me. Before I made my account private, one sent me a message saying, "You're beautiful," with a heart and a heart eyes emoji. My manager contacted the police, but it's not a high priority because he hasn't threatened me. He's just creepy. Now my mom drives me to and from work. I bring packed lunches and don't go out during breaks anymore. I hope this ends soon. The police banned him from the mall, and security is supposed to remove him if they see him, but he keeps coming back. I've done a police interview, and they took photos of him from the cameras. My mom is also contacting my school because one Instagram post showed where I go. I'm just so tired of constantly looking over my shoulder. I really hope I don't have to deal with this much longer. I work at a small diner in a quiet town in the south. I can't say exactly where it is, but it's on a street where lots of people pass by, walking to the bus stop or their homes. The diner has a parking lot, and usually I park close to the entrance. But there was one night I parked all the way at the far end, and I've regretted it ever since. A few years ago, I worked at a sports-themed cafe right across the street from my current job. I only stayed there for about 4 months, but I have a lot of stories from that place. Back then, I didn't own a car, so I often walked to work, sometimes late at night on poorly lit roads. It wasn't safe, especially since some older men would always stare at me or say creepy things, even though I was just a teenager. One man in particular stuck with me, tall, handsome, always wearing fancy clothes and jewelry. At first, he seemed polite, asking about my day and work. But over time, his questions got too personal. One night, right before I quit that job, things got really weird. It was a busy night during the sports season, and I was stressed dealing with customers celebrating a big game win. After cleaning the bathrooms, I found that man waiting for me near the hostess stand. He looked different, less put together and more intense. He asked me, "You're 18, right?" I nodded, feeling uneasy. Then he said, "When you turn 20, I have a surprise for you. Just wait." Then he walked away. I was shocked and scared. I finished my work quickly, grabbed my bike, and started riding home, constantly looking over my shoulder. I felt like someone was watching me the whole way. Fast forward to now. I've been working at the new diner for almost a year, and it's been busier lately. One night, I had to park far away because all the spots near the door were taken. After a long shift, I was tired but happy to leave. When I got outside, I noticed a car parked next to mine that I hadn't seen before. It looked familiar, but I was too tired to think much about it. As I got closer, I saw someone sitting inside. At first, I thought it was a coworker waiting for a ride, but the manager's car was still parked by the front door empty. Something didn't feel right. When I looked closer, the driver's face was faintly lit inside the car. His eyes met mine. I felt frozen with fear. He didn't smile or say anything, just stared. I took one step forward, then stopped and thought, what am I doing? I ran back to the restaurant's back door, feeling like I was being hunted. When I glanced back, the light inside the car went off and the man disappeared into darkness. I told my coworkers what happened. They were alarmed and stayed with me until my ride arrived. Then it hit me. It was the same man from my old job. He looked older and much scarier now. We walked out together, and the manager even checked under my car and inside it before I left, since she'd dealt with a stalker before and knew how to stay safe. I thanked her and drove home, taking a longer route because I was terrified he might be waiting for me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing his cold, empty expression. I thought about calling the police, but didn't, since I only knew his first name and didn't think they'd do much. Since then, I haven't seen him again, but I always leave work with someone now. I still wonder what that surprise was that he promised me when I turned 20. I just hope I never find out. I'm Rachel, and this story is something I'll never forget. It still makes me uneasy when I think about it. A few months ago, I took my younger cousin Liam on a hike at Pine Hollow Nature Reserve. He had recently gotten into hiking and exploring, and I wanted to encourage that. I chose a short trail that led to a beautiful spot called Whistler's Bend. It was only about half a mile long, and I had been there before. It's usually full of visitors, so I figured it would be safe and relaxing. But that summer, heavy storms had passed through the area and damaged a lot of the trails. I didn't think it would be a big issue, but when we got there, I noticed right away that the trail looked rough and no one else was around. Even though that was strange, I wasn't too worried. There was a small crew fixing a bridge near the start of the trail, so I thought maybe people were just staying away because of the damage. The path was much narrower than I remembered, and in some places, there was a steep drop into a rocky creek bed. But Liam is pretty athletic, and he was excited to go on an adventure. We kept going carefully and made it all the way to Whistler's Bend, which is more of a cliffside ledge with a small waterfall flowing over it than an actual cave. There were trees fallen all around the area, and the wooden viewing platform was closed off with a warning sign. Still, Liam begged to go closer. So we carefully made our way past the blocked area and down to a spot beneath the overhang where you could hear the water trickling down. It was peaceful, but then we started noticing some weird things. On one of the large flat rocks, there was a small handmade doll, the kind made from twigs and string. It looked like someone had put effort into making it, but it was also old and damp. I thought maybe some kids had left it there while playing, so I didn't say anything. Liam didn't seem to notice. As we climbed a bit higher, we saw more of them, 2 more twig dolls, and a few odd symbols scratched into the dirt nearby. That's when I started to feel uneasy. It didn't seem like random stuff anymore. Something about it felt off. But Liam suddenly got excited and ran toward a small puddle filled with tiny frogs. He started catching them carefully, laughing and completely in his own world. I didn't want to ruin the moment. He hadn't been that happy in a long time, so I let him play. We stayed there for almost an hour while he caught and released little frogs, and I kept looking around, feeling like something was wrong but not knowing what. When we finally decided to leave and climb back to the platform area, I stopped in my tracks. Right in the middle of the tree roots near the path, there was a folded piece of cloth. It looked like it had just been placed there. It wasn't dirty or torn. It was clean and had strange symbols drawn on it with something red. I knew for sure it hadn't been there earlier. Liam saw it too, but didn't seem bothered. He asked what it was, and I just said, "Probably trash someone left," and told him to keep walking ahead of me. Inside, I was panicking. I knew 2 things at that moment. Someone had been nearby watching us the entire time, and they had purposely placed that cloth where we would find it. There was no way to leave quickly. The trail was too narrow and steep for running. So I told Liam he was doing an amazing job and encouraged him to walk faster, pretending like everything was fine. We made it back to the car, and I locked the doors right away. As we were driving out of the park, I saw someone step out of the trees near the edge of the lot. He looked like he hadn't bathed in days, muddy clothes, messy hair, and a blank expression. He stared right at me. Not just looked, stared. His eyes followed the car as I drove by, his head turning slowly to keep watching. He didn't look away until he disappeared from view in the mirror. That stare still haunts me. That moment confirmed everything I was afraid of. Someone had seen us, watched us the whole time we were alone in the woods, and made sure we knew by the end. I thought about seeing a counselor afterward. I had trouble sleeping and kept replaying the moment over and over. I tried to tell myself that maybe he was just camping and didn't want to scare us. But I knew in my gut it wasn't that. Liam still talks about that day like it was the best adventure ever. He has no idea how scared I was. I'm glad he didn't feel what I felt, but I'll never go back to that place again. I'm a guy in my early 20s now, but this story happened when I was 14. I grew up in a small town in Ontario, Canada, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. When I was in 8th grade, I had a really close friend named Lily. We weren't dating, but we spent nearly every day together, and looking back, there were definitely some red flags about her. One of the weirdest things that ever happened to me involved Lily and an abandoned nature trail near our neighborhood. The trail led into a wooded area that ended at a steep ravine with a dried-up creek at the bottom. It was one of those places that gave you an uneasy feeling, super quiet, shadowy even during the day, and completely cut off from any nearby roads. Lily knew I hated going there, but she always insisted on walking the trail because she liked to sneak cigarettes where her parents wouldn't catch her. She'd guilt me into coming, saying we never spent enough time together, or that I was acting distant if I refused. So most of the time, I just went along. One afternoon, she wanted to go further down the path than we'd ever been. The deeper we got, the quieter it became. No birds, no wind, just the sound of our shoes on twigs and leaves. We eventually reached the top of a hill, where the ground dropped sharply into the ravine. It was steep and dangerous, with loose rocks and tangled roots. You couldn't climb down without risking serious injury. Lily asked me to sit on a fallen log and lit her cigarette like usual. But something felt different. She wasn't talking as much. She mostly nodded or gave me short replies, staring off into the trees like she wasn't really present. Then she stood up and walked toward the edge of the ravine. I watched her, confused. She turned back to me and said she had something to show me, a secret hideout she built down below, inside a cave. That completely threw me off. I'd never seen any cave down there, and from what I knew, she never came out here alone. I told her it didn't make sense. There was no safe way down. Every path we'd ever taken led to high ground. She just smiled and said she found a hidden way to climb down, and that inside the ravine, there was a small cave where she'd been hanging out alone for weeks. She said it was peaceful, and she wanted me to come see it with her. The whole thing felt incredibly wrong. She kept asking me to come to the edge and look down. I stood up but didn't move closer. I said something like, "You can't have a hideout down there, Lily. You'd break your neck trying to get down. Let's just go back." But she was persistent. She said there was a trick to getting down, that she'd done it before, and that she would go first if I was nervous. I just shook my head. I peeked over a little from a distance. All I could see were rocks, some overgrown bushes, and the dry creek bed. Nothing that looked like a cave. When I turned to look at her, she was staring at me with the strangest expression. Her smile was wide and frozen, like she was waiting for something. My stomach dropped. It wasn't that I thought she was going to hurt me. I didn't think she was dangerous, but everything about the moment felt wrong. Too quiet, too strange. She told me again to just start climbing down, and that she'd come after me. I laughed it off and said something like, "If we go down there, we're never getting back up." She insisted she'd done it before, and it was easy. But I just couldn't do it. I told her I was leaving, and that if she really wanted to go down, she could go without me. I guess the firmness in my voice finally made her back off. She sighed, grabbed her bag, and we walked back without saying much. She never brought it up again, and we stopped hanging out not long after that. She'd started acting more controlling, more possessive, and honestly, I just didn't feel safe anymore. I still don't know what she was really trying to do that day. Maybe it was just a weird prank, or maybe she really believed there was a cave down there. But to this day, it's one of the creepiest moments I've ever experienced. I'm not saying she wanted to hurt me, but something in my gut told me not to follow her, and I'm glad I didn't. Sometimes your instincts know things that your brain can't explain. Always trust your gut. It might just keep you safe. This happened exactly 3 years ago, and I still get chills thinking about it. Back then, I might have come face to face with someone living off the grid, maybe even a fugitive, after stumbling across a hidden cave during a trip in the woods. It was spring break of my junior year in high school. I went to school in a quiet mountain town in Oregon. Some friends and I were part of a nature photography club, and we'd been wanting to do a photo trip together for a while. We finally made it happen in March 2018. There were 4 of us, me, Sam, Ethan, and Marcus. We picked a place called Bear Creek Pines, a lesser-known nature reserve in the Cascade foothills. Since the early 1900s, the area had a strange reputation. There were old stories of missing hikers, weird symbols carved into trees, and even a rumor about someone living in a cave system out there. Being adventurous teens, this only made us more excited. It was close enough to a small town called Trailhead Ridge, so we figured we could get supplies easily. We packed 2 small cars, loaded our cameras, and hit the road. After about 2 hours of driving, things started getting weird. My phone lost all data service just as we left the last big town. Even stranger, our GPS suddenly rerouted us onto an unfamiliar road. With no real idea where we were, we just followed the new path. Soon, the paved road gave way to gravel, then to dirt, and finally to what looked like an abandoned forest trail. There were no signs saying we were near Bear Creek Pines, and the trees thinned out before opening up again. We passed a rundown barn with no lights or cars nearby. Weirded out, we slowed down. The road beyond was full of deep tire ruts and mud, so we parked nearby and hiked the rest of the way. The trail led down a slope into thick forest. At first, it was amazing: old pine trees, a clear creek, and limestone rock faces. There was even a tiny waterfall. We spotted a pond at the bottom with a rusty private property, "Keep Out" sign on one side. Sam checked the time, and we decided to head into Trailhead Ridge to grab some dinner and last-minute supplies. Trailhead Ridge was even smaller than we thought, barely 800 people. Locals gave us strange looks as we walked into the gas station. Marcus asked around about Bear Creek Pines, but no one seemed to know the name. That was red flag number 1. Still, we shrugged it off and headed back. The barn was still dark and quiet. I left a polite note on the barn door explaining we were parked nearby and wouldn't block anything. We hiked back to the forest and set up camp near the creek. That area seemed perfect at first, quiet, with enough open space to camp. Then we noticed a strange log bench with a stone fire ring nearby. It looked freshly used, with blackened wood that hadn't seen rain. Still, we figured someone from the house used it. Then things got weird. Ethan pointed out an orange hat sitting on a rock. Nearby was an empty energy drink can, a single winter glove, and, oddly, a half-used stick of lip balm. The drink was still sticky inside like it had just been opened. As we looked closer, Sam shouted from farther up the creek, "There's a cave here." He said it was big enough to crawl into, and he thought he saw red fabric inside. But before he could look further, Marcus waved us over and quietly said, "Shampoo, there's freaking shampoo here." Sure enough, a blue bottle of shampoo lay near the creek. At that point, I started feeling really uncomfortable. It had rained hard the night before. Nothing out here should have been dry. But all those things, the hat, can, glove, fire pit, they were untouched by water. That meant someone had been here very recently, possibly even while we were exploring. I started to put the pieces together. The fire was still fresh. The cave could have offered shelter. Whoever was using the shampoo had probably been living rough, and not by choice. Maybe hiding, and they'd left in a hurry, maybe when they heard us coming. The creepiest part? From the way the rocks and cliffs were shaped, someone up top could easily see us while staying completely hidden. They could have watched us arrive and waited for us to leave. Just then, the forest went dead silent. No birds, no squirrels, just the sound of the creek. That's when we heard it, movement up on the ridge. Something big was rustling in the trees, right near the cave Sam had found. We looked up and saw a dark figure moving slowly down the slope toward us. There was no path from the ridge to our spot. The only way down was around the pond and back up the stream. We panicked and ran, back up the trail, across the muddy field, and to the cars. We didn't stop until we were halfway back to town. Later that night, Marcus searched online and found a local news report from weeks earlier. Someone had escaped from a nearby correctional facility. He was convinced we'd found that guy's hideout. We weren't so sure, but to be safe, we anonymously called it in. None of us ever followed up. I doubt the police thought much of it. After all, for teens, camping in the woods probably didn't look like a big threat. But whoever that was in the woods, he had a reason to stay hidden. And when Sam found that cave, he didn't like it. After reviewing the GPS later, I learned that our route had taken us through an old, decommissioned trail into the forest. The real entrance was miles away. We had wandered into an area that was still public land, but basically forgotten. To the person living out there, I'm glad we never saw you face to face. Stay safe out there, everyone.